The coffee cup shattered against the marble floor, sending ceramic shards skittering across the polished surface of the upscale café. Marcus Chen didn't even flinch. After 20 years of building his tech empire from nothing, very little rattled him anymore. He simply gestured to the waiter for another espresso and returned his attention to the acquisition reports on his tablet. Numbers, projections, profit margins, these were the things that made sense in his carefully ordered world. "Sir." The small voice was barely audible above the ambient jazz playing through the café's sound system. Marcus didn't look up. People interrupted him constantly, employees, journalists, people wanting favors or investments. He'd learned long ago to tune out distractions. "Sir, please." Something in the desperation of that second plea made him pause. He lifted his eyes from the screen and found himself looking at a girl who couldn't have been more than 9 years old. She had tangled brown hair pulled into a lopsided ponytail, worn sneakers with fraying laces, and clutched something wrapped in a faded red cloth against her chest. Her eyes were puffy and red-rimmed, and she was trembling slightly. "Can you fix my toy?" she asked, her voice cracking. "It was our last gift from Dad." Marcus felt an unexpected tightness in his chest. He should have dismissed her, should have called over the café staff to handle this interruption. Instead, he found himself setting down his tablet. "What makes you think I can fix anything?" The girl sniffled and wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "My mom said the man who sits in this corner every Tuesday is very smart and can fix anything. She cleans here at night. She said you're someone important who builds things." Marcus recognized the description. It came from Elena, one of the evening cleaning staff. He'd spoken to her a few times when working late, brief exchanges about the weather or the quality of the coffee. He hadn't realized she paid such close attention, or that she had a daughter. "I see," Marcus said carefully. "And what exactly needs fixing?" With trembling hands, the girl unwrapped the red cloth, revealing a small wooden music box. It was clearly handmade, carved with intricate designs of birds and flowers. The craftsmanship was remarkable, though the wood was scratched and worn. The girl tried to wind the key on the bottom, but nothing happened. No melody emerged, no dancing figurine spun. "It stopped working last week," she whispered. "My dad made it for my 7th birthday, 2 years ago. He said as long as I had this, he'd always be with me. And now it's broken, and I can't hear the song anymore, and I feel like I'm forgetting him." The last words came out in a rush, followed by a choked sob that the girl tried desperately to suppress. She pressed her lips together hard, clearly trying to be brave, trying not to cry in front of a stranger. Marcus felt something crack inside him, a wall he'd built brick by brick over decades. "What happened to your father?" "Car accident, 15 months ago." The girl's voice was flat now, repeating facts she'd probably had to explain too many times. "A drunk driver. Dad died instantly," they said. "He was coming home from his workshop where he made furniture and toys and beautiful things." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he cleared his throat and gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit down. What's your name?" "Sophie." "Sophie, I'm Marcus. May I look at the music box more closely?" She nodded and carefully placed it on the table between them, treating it with the reverence one might give a holy relic. Because for her, Marcus realized, that's exactly what it was, the last tangible connection to a father taken too soon. He picked up the box gently, turning it over in his hands. The weight was substantial, suggesting quality materials. The mechanism inside rattled slightly when he shook it. He tried the winding key again. It turned, but didn't engage with anything. The problem was internal. "I'll need to open it," Marcus said. "There might be something broken inside that I can repair, or there might not be. I can't make any promises, Sophie. Do you understand?" She nodded vigorously. "I understand, but please try, please." Marcus called over the waiter. "Bring me the toolkit from my car. David knows where it is." The young man hurried off, returning minutes later with a leather case. Marcus rarely went anywhere without his tools, old habits from his days building circuit boards in his garage, back when he was nobody, back before the money in the mansion and the carefully curated public image. He selected a small screwdriver and began carefully removing the tiny screws holding the bottom panel of the music box. Sophie watched with intense focus, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "My dad used to let me watch him work," she said quietly. "In his workshop, I'd sit on a stool and he'd explain everything he was doing. He said the most important thing about fixing something broken was patience and respect for the object. He said everything worth saving deserves your full attention. Marcus's hand stilled for just a moment. How long had it been since he'd given anything his full attention beyond balance sheets and market strategies? How long since he'd actually created something with his hands rather than just signing off on other people's creations? He removed the bottom panel carefully, revealing the delicate brass mechanism inside. The problem was immediately apparent. A tiny gear had come loose from its post and was wedged in the wrong position, preventing the entire mechanism from turning. It was a simple fix, technically, but the real challenge would be realigning everything without damaging the aged metal. Your father was a master craftsman, Marcus murmured, examining the intricate work. This mechanism is entirely handmade. Do you see these gears? Each one was individually carved and fitted. This kind of precision is rare, especially for something he made at home. Sophie leaned forward, her eyes brightening slightly. Really, he was good, he was exceptional. The man who made this had real talent and cared deeply about his work. Marcus met her eyes. He cared deeply about you, Sophie. Every detail of this music box was made with love. A tear rolled down Sophie's cheek, but this time she smiled through it. Marcus returned his focus to the mechanism, using a pair of tweezers to carefully extract the loose gear. His hands, which signed multi-million-dollar contracts with casual flicks of an expensive pen, now moved with painstaking precision. He could feel Sophie's hope radiating across the table, a palpable weight of expectation and desperate need. The gear slipped twice before he finally managed to align it properly with its post. He held his breath as he used a tiny drop of adhesive to secure it in place. Then came the waiting, 5 minutes for the adhesive to set while neither of them spoke. The cafe's ambient noise seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of them suspended in this moment of fragile possibility. Finally, Marcus carefully wound the key. For a heart-stopping second, nothing happened. Then, with a soft clicking sound, the mechanism engaged. The gears began to turn, and a sweet, tinkling melody filled the air. On top of the box, a tiny wooden bird began to rotate slowly, its painted wings seeming to flutter in time with the music. Sophie gasped, her hands flying to cover her mouth. The song was simple but beautiful, a lullaby that sounded like comfort and safety in bedtime stories. Tears streamed freely down her face now, but her expression was radiant with joy. You fixed it, she breathed. You really fixed it. Marcus felt his own eyes burning unexpectedly. Your father's craftsmanship made it possible to fix. The foundation was strong, it just needed some careful attention. Sophie stood up and, without warning, threw her arms around Marcus in a fierce hug. He stiffened initially, unused to such spontaneous affection, but then awkwardly patted her back. When was the last time someone had hugged him with such genuine gratitude, not because he'd signed their paycheck or funded their project, but simply because he'd done something kind? Thank you, Sophie whispered. Thank you so much. You're welcome. Marcus's voice was rougher than usual. Sophie pulled back and carefully wrapped the music box in its red cloth, cradling it like the treasure it was. I have to go. Mom will worry if I'm late getting home from school. But thank you, sir. Thank you for giving me back my dad's voice. She started to leave, then turned back. Mom says you're always working, always busy with important things. But what you just did, that was the most important thing anyone's done for me in a long time. Marcus watched her skip out of the cafe, her whole demeanor transformed from the broken, desperate child who'd approached him minutes earlier. He sat back in his chair, the acquisition reports on his tablet completely forgotten. For the first time in years, he thought about his own father. William Chen had been a mechanic who'd immigrated from Taiwan with nothing but his skills and determination. He'd worked 18-hour days to give Marcus opportunities he'd never had, education, stability, a chance to dream bigger than just survival. Marcus had built his fortune on the foundation his father provided, but somewhere along the way, he'd stopped thinking about the man who'd made it all possible. His father had died 12 years ago, and Marcus had been too busy with a product launch to make it to the funeral on time. The guilt he'd buried deep resurfaced now, sharp and painful. His father had also worked with his hands, had also created and fixed things with care and precision. When had Marcus last honored that legacy? When had he last used his success for something beyond accumulating more success? That evening, Marcus didn't go to his usual high-end restaurant for dinner. Instead, he drove to the neighborhood where Elena lived, a working-class area he'd have avoided in his daily route planning. He found Sophie and her mother in a small apartment above a laundromat. Elena's shock at seeing him was evident. but Sophie grabbed his hand and pulled him inside with the unselfconscious enthusiasm of childhood. "He fixed it, Mom. He fixed Daddy's music box." Alina's eyes filled with tears as Sophie demonstrated the working mechanism. "Mr. Chen, I don't know what to say. Sophie's been heartbroken since it stopped working. I tried to take it to repair shops, but everyone said it would cost more than I could afford, or that the mechanism was too delicate and they couldn't guarantee they could fix it without breaking it further." "It was my pleasure," Marcus said, and meant it. "Your daughter is remarkable, Elena. You've done a wonderful job raising her." Over cups of tea that felt more genuine than any boardroom coffee, Marcus learned about Elena's life. She worked 2 jobs, cleaning the cafe at night and doing data entry during the day, to make ends meet. Sophie was on the honor roll at school despite everything they'd been through. They had dreams. Elena wanted to go back to school to become a nurse. Sophie wanted to be an engineer who built things that helped people. "Your husband would be proud," Marcus said, quietly, "of both of you." As he drove home that night to his empty mansion overlooking the city, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about the contrast between Sophie's small, cramped apartment filled with love and laughter and his own palatial residence filled with expensive furniture and profound loneliness. He'd spent 20 years building an empire, but what had he actually constructed that mattered? The next morning, Marcus called an emergency meeting with his executive team. They gathered in the conference room, expecting another strategic initiative or market expansion plan. Instead, Marcus announced the creation of the Chen Foundation for Working Families, to be funded with an initial endowment of $50 million from his personal fortune. The focus will be on providing support, education, and opportunities for families facing hardship, he explained. Scholarship programs for children who've lost parents, vocational training for adults seeking better careers, and community workshops teaching practical skills like woodworking, mechanics, and technology repair. His executives exchanged glances. "Sir, with respect, this seems like a significant departure from our core business focus," his CFO ventured carefully. Marcus smiled, a real smile, not the practiced expression he used in press photos. "That's exactly the point. I built this company on the foundation my father provided. It's time I started building something that would make him proud." He hired Elena as the foundation's first program coordinator, paying her a salary that allowed her to quit her second job and enroll in nursing school. Sophie received a full scholarship to a prestigious STEM program for gifted students. And Marcus himself began teaching a weekly workshop on electronics repair and engineering fundamentals, working directly with kids who reminded him why he'd fallen in love with building things in the first place. 6 months later, Marcus sat in the same corner of the cafe, but his Tuesday meetings looked different now. Instead of reviewing acquisition reports, he was examining a solar-powered charging station designed by 3 students from the Foundation's program. Sophie sat beside him, asking technical questions that demonstrated a sharp, inquiring mind that reminded him of his younger self. The cafe door opened and a man walked in, clearly nervous, holding something wrapped in cloth. He approached Marcus's table hesitantly. "Excuse me, sir, I heard you're the person who can fix things. My daughter said a girl at school told her about you helping. I have my father's pocket watch, he carried it in World War II. It stopped working and it's all I have left of him." Marcus looked at the man, then at Sophie, who grinned and nodded encouragingly. He cleared space on the table. "Let me take a look. But first, tell me about your father. What was his story?" As the man began to talk, his voice thick with emotion, Marcus caught his own reflection in the cafe window. The face looking back at him was different somehow, still successful, still driven, but now with something else in his eyes. Purpose, connection, the understanding that true wealth wasn't measured in profit margins but in moments of genuine human impact. Sophie's question had been simple, "Can you fix my toy?" But in answering it, Marcus had fixed something far more important, the broken part of himself that had forgotten why success mattered in the first place. He'd been so busy building an empire that he'd forgotten to build a life worth living. The music box sat on the edge of the table, its gentle melody playing softly. The wooden bird turned in endless circles, a father's love translated into brass and carved wood, now preserved for a daughter who would carry that love forward into her own bright future. And Marcus, who'd thought he had everything, had finally found what he'd been missing all along, a reason to use his gifts for something beyond himself. Some things, he'd learned, couldn't be measured in dollars or quarterly projections. Some things were worth infinitely more than the sum of their parts. And some moments, like a desperate girl asking a stranger for help in a cafe, had the power to change everything. That was the message Marcus would spend the rest of his life sharing. That every broken thing deserved a chance at repair, every person deserved dignity and opportunity, and that the truest measure of success was how many lives you'd touched with kindness along the way. His father had taught him to build with his hands. Sophie had reminded him to build with his heart. And in the end, that made all the difference.